A top-down awakening is a kind of energetic awakening. And as the name would imply, it happens from the top down. So if by virtue of being present, there is perceived energy that was not palpable before, and at the same time there are blockages, energetic blockages throughout the body, the perception of energy can concentrate in a particular area. So in a top-down awakening, it can start as a tingle in the forehead, and then eventually there's the feeling it's like a crown or a diadem of energy, like a band around the head, as if the top of the head were being cut off. And there can be intense energy, the perception of which runs counter to attention's immersion in thought. And it's as if there's not enough circuitry to hold all the energy. And there's a concern, one, about sanity, and two, that there could be physical damage because of the intensity of the ongoing experience. Energetic awakenings are experienced in many different ways. And so it's really just anecdotal in what's being shared here. So they can be very different from individual to individual. But the way that energetic awakening, such as the top-down, can be dealt with is through distributing the energy throughout the body. So there are blockages which are, they correspond to memory, and they can be tied to specific memories, and yet they represent blockages of energy that are felt within the body. It's like a tension that's associated with an accumulation of experiences, trauma. And so there is needed a letting go, and it's done through feeling. There are thoughts that underlie feelings, and if the thought is unwanted, then it's often countered with other thoughts. That's a normal way of dealing with unwanted thoughts, is to kind of work them out, each one representing a problem that has to be thought through. And that doesn't stop the unwanted thought. It doesn't create a new reality. It's like a weed. It grows back. It's the roots of the weed that need to be dealt with, and that would be the energy that underlies the thought. And it's dealt with by feeling it and surrendering to the feeling of it and then letting it go. The feeling is not relational the way the content is. So when there's a a thought and it has energy underneath it, the vibration of that energy corresponds with the feeling that's derived from the thought. But that energy can be dissipated through letting it go. And that can help relieve the blockage and distribute the energy. And then being mindful of breathing. And certain breathing techniques to distribute the energy. Ultimately, the energy stabilizes in the spiritual heart, in the heart center. Energy concentrated anywhere else will feel like an overload. But the spiritual heart in stillness seems to balance the energy and transmute it to love. But when there's an energetic awakening, thoughts can trigger serious discomfort. And so, to the extent that thoughts trigger energetic discomfort, they are more noticed. And the mindfulness that this creates becomes a means to create space within oneself. The inner space, to create inner space, to allow inner space through that process of letting go, which changes perception and can allow one to be more present and thus perceive the energy body. But from there, there is a management of the energy that's self-evident, a need for the management of energy that is self-evident. It's less comfortable to be disconnected from the truth of the moment as it unfolds. There's a discomfort with a departure from truth, to the extent that a lie creates a mental object that around which reality must be bent with words. It creates a blockage, a disturbance, an eddy in the flow of energy. And so it's best to stay aligned with truth when the energy body becomes palpable. And it's best to be allowing of what is, without too much mental resistance. It doesn't mean that there can't be action to deal with circumstance, but there's no requirement that things be felt a certain way. If there's no perception that phenomena relates to a conceptual self, there may be no emotion. It's like if you take the ball out of a spray paint can, it's not going to make any noise. If you take the identification with form and thought away from a being, there's just not the emotional rattling in the shaking of circumstance. The energy is allowed to rise vibrationally to the level of love.